Uh-oh. Motherfucking relay. We're covering today's top boxing news.
Okay, we'll start with this. It would appear that Ben Shalom and Boxer have finally sorted out Franchesca Hennessy's situation and making her next ring appearance on the undercard of the Jonas versus Price fight. You will recall that Franchesca was disgruntled, confused. She was summoned to the kickoff press conference, but her fight was not announced, so she was just kind of there, left in limbo. Savannah Marshall, too. Savannah, who said she won't be boxing on that undercard. She was just there, and you wonder that they won't sort her situation out as well in the coming days leading up to the fight. But they've sorted out Franchesca, and she's going to be facing Bolivia's own Carla Gonzalez. Franchesca made some mention that she was supposed to be boxing for a title on this show. Looking at this opponent, I don't get the sense that it's a title fight. Carla Gonzalez sports a professional record of 7 wins with 3 losses, no draws, 6 knockouts, having been knocked out 2 times in 10 professional bouts. Not a champion. Not a titleist. To Franchesca Hennessy, who sports an unblemished record of 5 wins with no losses, no draws, 1 recorded knockout. In what looks to be a run-of-the-mill run-out fight for Franchesca Hennessy, a run-of-the-mill developmental fight, the kind of fight you expect a young fighter to have in the early stages of their career, against an opponent that's there to do little more than give you some rounds. Carla Gonzalez last in action in December of last year opposite the ring Carla Urani, who she stopped in 2 rounds. Carla saw action 3 times last year. She had 3 fights and won 2 out of the 3, both against girls with losing records. It's worth noting that one of those fights was against Australia's own Lynn Sandstorm, who outpointed Carla Gonzalez. So that essentially means that the only girls that Carla beat last year were ones with upside-down records, girls who never actually won a fight. 0-3, 0-2. But when they stepped her up, she lost. So now they're stepping her up again against Franchesca Hennessy, and I expect the same thing to happen. I expect that Carla's going to get beat. Franchesca is going to beat her. Franchesca, who also saw action 3 times last year, once in February, again in June, then again in October. This will be her first fight of this year, leaving plenty of time to schedule 2, 3, maybe even 4 more fights. If you haven't seen Franchesca in action, she's a bit of a slickster, mid-range to inside fighter, likes to angle off, move her torso, move her head, counter. Doesn't seem to be that big on power. I don't really expect her to be at 20 years old. She's not as strong now as she will be later on, and certainly not as experienced as she will be later on. We've yet to see the very best from Franchesca Hennessy, and maybe we will when they step her up. This looks like a run-of-the-mill run-out fight to me. Look for the ring return of Franchesca Hennessy on the undercard of Jonas versus Price next month. Rumors abound in the men's super flyweight division. Word round the campfire is that Chocolatito, the 4-division champion, is en route to challenge WBO champion Fumalela Cafu. Felix Savala, president of All Star Boxing, a U.S. professional boxing promotional company, said, "We are currently in negotiations for a WBO super flyweight title fight between Roman Chocolatito Gonzalez and Fumalela Cafu. A tentative agreement has already been reached with both fighters, and the fight is scheduled to take place in Managua, the capital of Nicaragua, after April," he said. Not the first we've heard about this fight. We talked about it in a previous video. The last time we saw Roman Gonzalez in action, he was making his bantamweight debut opposite the ring Robert Barrera. That was in July of last year. It's the only fight that he's had in the last two. He sat out all of 2023 and only boxed once in 2024. They're talking about putting him in there with Fumalela Cafu sometime after April, but you don't want to let a year pass, an entire year pass, before you do this thing, because Chocolatito is 37 years old. That's old in a very general sense for a boxer, but especially for a super flyweight, who will not have fought at the super flyweight limit in roughly 3 years. The last time Choco made that weight was in December of 2022 for the Gallo Estrada fight. His last one wasn't at Superfly, it was at Bantam, and it wasn't on Matchroom. It wasn't on DAZN, it was on ESPN, seemingly heralding the end of his relationship with Matchroom, that they didn't pick up his fight and they didn't broadcast it on DAZN. Matchroom that not that long ago was talking about putting Choco in there with Bam Rodriguez. Now what they're talking about doing is putting him in there with Fernando Puma Martinez, the reigning WBA champion, in what would be a WBC-WBA unification match. And we'll see if they get it done, because I've been hearing about that for weeks, but nothing's official. Back over to Chocolatito. If Chocolatito can beat Fumalela Cafu for his brown belt, if he can become WBO champion, he enters back into the frame for that Bam Rodriguez fight. If he can become a champion. Fumalela Cafu might be his best bet to become world champion, because Fumalela, in spite of being unbeaten, only has about 14 professional bouts to Chocolatito's 56. So we know who to give the edge in experience to, but there is such a thing as having too much experience. He is 37 years old. At that age, do you trust him? I don't know. Against a younger, fresher fighter in Fumalela Cafu, 26 years old, last in action in October of last year against then-champion Kosei Tanaka, who he upset to become WBO champion himself. It's the only fight that Fumalela had last year. Won a split decision. In Japan. Now he'll be traveling to Nicaragua, if this news checks out, as the away fighter again. The traveling champion. Irrespective of who wins this fight, if it happens, I want the winner, whoever it is, to go fight Bam. Whether Choco wins, or Fumalela wins, whoever wins, go fight Bam. Do it. Making unification matches happen in the super flyweight division shouldn't take this long. It shouldn't be that difficult, because these guys don't cost as much as the guys you find at lightweight and super lightweight, welter, middle, heavy. I want unification matches to happen in the super flyweight division this year. I'm a customer, and the customer is always right.
Call your tits, Karen. We'll get your order.
It's fight week for Jack Catterall at super lightweight. It's fight week for Arnold Barboza, and what the WBO are describing as the definitive matchup to determine the mandatory challenger for Teofimo Lopez. 2 boxes. 2 movies. Not a matchup that I would describe as a barn burner in any sense of the word, but the real intrigue is what happens after that. Whether Jack wins or Arnold wins, Teofimo's going to be on the spot. He's on the clock, and he's not the only one. So is Richardson Hitchens. This weekend, a mandatory challenger via the WBO will be crowned. Then, early next month, a mandatory challenger via the IBF will be crowned when Subriel Matias faces Gabriel Valenzuela. The point. Time is running out for Teofimo and Richardson Hitchens to come to a deal, come to an agreement for a fight between them in the spring before their mandatories are installed. The grace period they've had to negotiate a deal is running out, and I don't know what they're doing. I don't know what they're up to. We've heard rumors and rumblings about them fighting, but nothing official. If you wait until after both mandatories are installed via the WBO and the IBF, that's 2 guys you gotta pay to step aside. Suddenly, negotiating a fight with Richardson Hitchens becomes a lot more complex. That many more fingers in the pie. My recommendation? What is it? Teofimo shouldn't even bother unifying with Richardson Hitchens if you're just going to leave the division right after. You should see about fighting Mario Barrios. Just imagine that you get Mario Barrios in the ring in your next fight, you beat him at welterweight for his WBC welterweight title, you become a 3-division champion. The legitimate argument that stylistically, Mario Barrios makes for a more winnable fight for Teofimo than Richardson Hitchens because Mario's not going to run from you. He's not going to try to keep you at arm's length, staying behind his jab, moving and using the ring. No, Mario's going to bring the fight to you.
Welterweight.
Ryan Garcia is moving up to welterweight. Devin Haney is moving up to welterweight. You may want the winner of that fight.
Their fight.
Any way you slice it, welterweight is the destination for Teofimo, so why not arrive there ahead of schedule? Devin's about to fight Jose Ramirez. Maybe Devin doesn't win that fight. Even if he doesn't, then you can go fight Jose Ramirez in defense of your WBC title.
If Devin loses.
If Devin wins, makes it to the Ryan Garcia rematch, and wins that, you can go fight him. You can go fight Devin.
It doesn't make sense to try to unify titles at super lightweight because one way or another, the biggest fights for Teofimo are at welter, which he's supposed to be going to anyway.
Haven't heard much from Mario Barrios and what he's supposed to be up to these days. He was supposed to be fighting Conor Benn, who is now fighting Chris Eubank Jr. at welter, and thus Mario is stuck without a dance partner. So why not just make a fight between him and Teofimo?
Teofimo just fought a guy like Mario and Steve Claggett. Mid-range to inside guy, volume guy, he just fought a guy like that.
Mario, if he wants to get the most out of his title, get the most bang for his buck, he could get that with Teofimo more so than waiting around for some mandatory to get installed.
Ain't got nothing against Mario, but he's the weakest link at 147. He's the weakest champion, in the most danger of losing his title at any time.
So for losing it to some nobody, put it on the line in a Teofimo Lopez fight. That's what he should go after. That's what Teofimo should go after. That's what they should do. Abandon ship at 140 because the walls are closing in. Subriel Matias is very close to becoming Richardson's problem, and the winner of Catterall versus Barboza.
They're close to becoming Lopez's problem.
Elsewhere in the world of boxing, an update to a story we've been keeping an eye on for a number of weeks now, a number of months. It would seem that ESPN will be leaving the sport.
Per a report from Front Office Sports,
They will not be renewing with Top Rank. Top Rank, whose founder and CEO is Bob Arum, originally signed with ESPN in 2017. The following year, the deal was amended to a 7-year pact for 54 events annually split between ESPN and ESPN Plus after Top Rank drew over 1.5 million viewers per show in the first year of the deal. ESPN told Top Rank it would exit the agreement early if the latter finds a new partner, sources said. An ESPN spokesperson declined to comment. We are in a dialogue with ESPN and many other parties regarding our media rights, Top Rank's Director of Communications, Evan Korn, said in a statement. While we never comment on the specifics of those discussions, we place tremendous value in our existing relationship with ESPN and the industry-defining experience we have together delivered to combat sports fans globally for the past 8 years. Sources said that Top Rank approached Netflix and Warner Brothers Discovery about partnering on a rights deal, but that the platforms had no preliminary interest. Spokespeople for Netflix and WBD declined to comment. Top Rank has also had discussions with ProBox TV about putting some fighters on their platform from time to time, as has been done on occasions in the past.
what that communicates to me is they want their independence. They don't want to be all bunched up with everybody else at the zone.
Because that's the other option. Migrating over to DAZN the same way that Frank Warren just did from TNT. I believe they have that option, but I also believe they want a certain level of distance.
A measure.
If what you've been doing is shopping yourself around to all of these other networks, these other broadcasters, it's got to be because going to DAZN is not your first choice.
Why not?
They might feel like it's too crowded over there. Matchroom, Golden Boy, Queensbury, there's too much going on.
Too much for them.
The boxing business has been in a state of flux for several years. For example, PBC moved from Fox Sports to Amazon last year. At the end of 2023, Showtime exited the boxing business after 37 years. The New York Times recently reported that Endeavor's TKO is exploring a partnership with Saudi official Turki El Al Sheikh to launch a new boxing league. TKO owns UFC and WWE, whose leaders, Dana White and Nick Khan, have some experience in boxing, as Endeavor CEO Ari Emanuel alluded to in an appearance with Pat McAfee last week. TKO and ESPN have been in business together with a UFC rights deal. Puck's John Arand reported this week that ESPN's exclusive negotiating window with UFC is set to expire in April.
There have been rumors about them too, that they could be leaving the ESPN platform.
That very soon, a bidding war could start for the rights to UFC fights. I believe Amazon was mentioned, Netflix as well. We'll see how that plays out.
The future of Top Rank.
We don't know who else they may have been talking to. They mentioned Warner Brothers. They mentioned Netflix. I don't know that they haven't had preliminary conversations with Peacock, the people at NBC, and whoever else.
That it's not a guarantee they go to DAZN. I would prefer they do.
But clearly that's not their first choice. Clearly, if they've been talking to this many other broadcasters, it's not because going to DAZN is their first choice. The reason for it, they may be too close to their competition. They might feel it's a little bit too crowded over there. May get too hairy scheduling fights when you've got all your competitors right there under the same banner. You've got to sort out a schedule that doesn't clash with anybody else's, with Golden Boy shows and Matchroom shows that may be happening right here in America.
Ideally.
And maybe they don't want to have to do that. Work with the competition.
But would they still be competition if they're all housed by the same platform?
In a manner of speaking, they are. Some outfits are going to get more priority than others. That at DAZN, Matchroom gets more priority than Golden Boy or GBM.
And what other smaller promotional outfits are there? Because there are smaller ones like Dimitri Salita.
At the risk of stating the obvious, if they can't get anything going with another major broadcaster, DAZN might be their only option and the only platform capable of housing that many fighters, because Top Rank has an extensive stable of fighters.
They got a lot of fighters.
So I don't want to speak too soon. Between now and the summer months, a lot can happen.
When the ESPN deal ends.
At minimum, I don't think it's a guarantee that they end up on DAZN. I would prefer that they do, but it's not a lock. Between now and then, who knows what could happen? Some other major player may come into the frame, or maybe some of the outfits that they've already spoken to might warm up to the idea of investing in boxing. I don't know, but here and now, I don't think it's a guarantee they end up on DAZN.
And ESPN leaving boxing?
This is a little different than what we saw from Showtime right before they left boxing, because they made it clear what they were doing and why.
They told you.
When the CEO of both Paramount and Showtime, Chris McCarthy, sent out that memo stating that anything that makes up less than 10% of the overall viewership on the network was going to get the axe, they made it crystal clear what they were doing and why. And it just so happened that boxing, along with some other non-boxing content,
that got the boot.
Here, we don't have an official statement from anybody at ESPN as to why they might be going in this direction. We don't know what they're thinking. What we do know is that they've been struggling.
ESPN has?
Yes, for years now. With the advent of streaming and streaming platforms, basic cable packages aren't what they used to be, and ESPN as a platform greatly benefited from those basic cable packages because they got a piece of that action. But with more and more Americans cutting the cord, it's tapping into their budget, their wallet.
So they don't have as much money to play as they used to. At minimum, that's been going on in the background the whole time. So that might have something to do with this.
Americans moving away from cable packages and subscribing only to the content they want to watch. It's a lot more customized now, and ESPN is feeling the pinch.